It's been a while since I've made one of these uh, videos with sort of panel and panel, so you can see my mug. My mug. Anyway, I'm going to color this After Realm piece. You know, After Realm, the second Kickstarter. We're about halfway through. We're doing okay, and although it's going on, been plenty busy. Weirdly, working from home already, all of this other craziness makes it less time to work. It's been a lot of paperwork and stuff to fill out and all this kind of health concern stuff. So sorry. Yeah, I wish I was making more After Realm videos during this time, but it's been a little wacky. Gotta get my other glasses. So anyway, I want to color this piece with Una and Puka. I want to show you my coloring process. It varies from project to project, from piece to piece, just depending on what it is or how complicated or difficult it is. I'm going to color this one fairly traditionally. And I got coffee. Dog's over there. You can't see him, but he's sitting next to me. And let's go. So one of the things I do is I always have my sort of reference colors and stuff. It's a slightly different outfit for Una than she's wearing here, but I think I can still kind of figure out those other colors. And Taki colored this piece. You'd think I'd have all my colors memorized at this point, but I don't. For my characters, their color themes and stuff. So I make this a darken layer, and beneath it, and I'm not going to flat this. Typically you're supposed to flat it, which is use these kind of like crazy colors to lay down the basics of everything and make sure all the pixels are covered up and stuff. Typically I'll do that, but in this case, just because it's fairly simple here, I'm just going to use the actual colors that I intend to fill in with. One of the things I'm going to do first is kind of look for these little spots here where there's large openings, because even though this program that I'm using, which is Clip Studio, has the ability to which says area scaling here, or close gap, I'm sorry. So that means this will close a gap between 6 pixels. So if there's 6 pixels in between this opening, it'll automatically fill it. In fact, let's see. No, it's not going to work, but let's say if I raised it like crazy, only 21 pixels. Yeah, see, it doesn't go past that area. I've also loved this setting here, area scaling. So it's 2 pixels beyond under this line work. So that's going to be hard to see with that color. I'll show you with the next ones. But it basically fills out that area underneath as well. Oops, I gotta make sure. One of the things I usually do too is I'll lock this layer so I don't accidentally color on it. So I'm going to do her skin tones first. Yeah, that's all the skin that's showing on her. Yeah, I really should have found a different piece for the coloring, because I know these are not quite the right color schemes for her, but that's okay. This is just like a promo piece, and who's to say that she can't change her clothes? Let's see what we do. Kind of got this gray outline and stuff. I'm going to just make this blur for here. Go with this darker color of green for her cape. what else is going on? It looks... I don't like that blue at all. Never mind. Let's just desaturate it. There you go. That's a lot better. So word is, according to Brian, that Bendis, it looks like I might be doing some more Young Justice. Nothing's written in stone yet, so I can't really say exactly, what or if, what or when, I mean. But, I did some pages a couple issues ago, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun drawing those characters. Found Spoiler particularly fun. Let me see. Yeah, just trying to think as I'm talking here and coloring. It's obviously, that's too much there. So here's where the grass meets the feet. There you go. I'll make the belt just a darker color. Gray. Red hair. I like also to use a lot of similar colors. So if you notice for the eyes, I just pulled the color out of here and I've desaturated it slightly. For her lips, it'll be basically the same as her skin color, but darker. Now, because it's a pinup, just a single illustration, I don't have to worry about being too consistent with her costume and colors, because there's not like another page next to it to have to compare it to. Oh, I realized I didn't actually draw in her shoulder pad thing on that side. So I'll just sort of imply it here with the colors. We're just seeing the edge of it. There you go. And then for a weird tannish color for this thing, I like when it fills in like this and it leaves these other spots, so I'm going to automatically just leave those so I can make them either darker or lighter, just to give it like a slightly different tone and variation. That's before I even do any rendering. One of the fun, in quotes, things is zooming in really close and finding all the little teeny tiny singular pixels that are not colored in. That's why you typically flat. It just makes it easier to deal with that stuff. But because of the program with the gap thing, with the area scaling, it makes it easier to just kind of just go right into it if you want. I wouldn't recommend it on an actual page. It gets far too complicated. But for something simple like this, just dive. I'm okay diving right in. Alright, so she's done. I could create another layer for... Oh, actually, she's not going to do it. Okay. For Puka, I should probably create another layer. However, I'm not. I'm just going to leave it as is. Again, just because it's super simple, and creating more layers at this stage would actually just kind of make it more difficult, more complicated. The only problem with this dragging thing too, which I love, so see how I can take the bucket and just drag it across different shapes and it fills everything in? That's so much better than tapping everywhere, although you have to remember to pick up the brush or the bucket, so, because every now and then what ends up happening is it fills in way too much of an area that you don't want to fill in, you know. A little lighter on the horns. Should be lighter than that even. That looks a little better. He's got sort of a silvery. Just keep that in the blue area, tiny hit of blue in it. Look at that. Oh, my mouse. Fill in the ear thing there. Color that in. And I'm not too worried about like the shading at this point, or what's going to be, you know, like a a darker color or not. I'll do all my shading afterwards. For now, it's just kind of like a coloring book. I'm just laying down basic colors, you know. I think for the tree, I'll go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer because I think I'm probably going to do some shading on it that would be a lot easier if it was on its own layer. Sometimes these things are so sort of instinctual, it's hard to explain. Also, that's happened because, at least for me, because I'm so, even before all this social distancing, I've been social distancing, not just because of the nature of my work, but it's just sort of our lifestyle. Just got to fill in the gaps here. But anyway, what that means, what I'm trying to say is, without being as socially interactive, especially with artists, as I used to, like going to cons and all that kind of stuff, it's harder to, I'm having more trouble communicating my ideas, you know, from the isolation. And then you add this isolation on top of that isolation, you know, makes it hard to figure out what the fuck I'm saying sometimes. So I'm going to create yet another layer, third layer. This is why I didn't do it on the figures, because the layers can just get out of hand really quickly for the grass. I'm going to make the grass really pop. Make it really green. Let's see what this looks like. I also realized the grass, because I didn't draw a horizon thing here, I'm going to probably go a blue to green kind of thing, where it's sort of abstractly suggesting where the grass is and where the sky is. You'll see once I get to that stage. And maybe it won't work. Maybe it will. Who's to say? I hope you guys enjoyed the first issue of After Realm. Feedback seems really good. The second issue concludes. Let me get back to the tree. The second issue concludes the first arc. Each issue being 56 pages. So that's basically the size of a graphic novel. So that's why it's basically the first arc. Then after that, I'm going to keep things mostly self-contained. Mostly self-contained issues that are either single stories or multiple short stories. You know, and they will kind of thread together. They'll create larger threads and eventually larger stories. But I'm going to try and keep, after issue 2, most of the reading experience to be condensed into singular issues, you know. I mean, that's something I dig. I miss comics where you could just sit there and read them, and they weren't this other commitment, you know. I mean, those are great too, but you know, I really do like just being able to sit down and just read a comic and get the whole thing, you know. So that's why I'm going to attempt. Plus, I've also liked short stories. And I think that just comes with getting older and having less time to sit there and indulge myself in a book and a movie or something because of time. So all these little tiny things in here. This is what becomes a pain in the ass, right? Is why is that locked? Oops. Filling in all these little things. So typically I'll do a pass where I'll do this. I'll just zoom in really tight and look for all the little gaps. What a pain in the butt. This is why people hire out flatters and stuff, you know. I'm going to half-ass it just because, again, this is a pinup, and I'm just using it online. If and when I ever go to publish it, I can clean it up. So I'm just going to do a very quick pass here on filling in any stray pixels here. So I'm going to do it layer by layer. So I'm just looking at the tree and the... Yeah, it's just a tree in this layer, I think. Oh no, I've got her open too. I'll shut them off because if I start coloring, if I accidentally color in on Puka and Una, now I've got these little spots here on the wrong layer. So let's just make sure I'm really actually doing this layer by layer. I haven't done many coloring videos. I think I've only done one other one, which was like a very different coloring style. It's what I color my sort of loosey-goosey sketchbook style, where I start out with just one layer of color. I'll just lay that one layer of color down, and yeah, I'll lay down that one layer of color, and then just adjust the hues and saturations and stuff to make my colors. Alright, let's look real quick at Puka's figure. Let's see if there's any major missing pixels. Oh shit, I know I did this. Look at this. Yeah, see, this is what I was talking about. This is the wrong layer where this is colored in. I think that was the only spot that I did it. At least that I can see. All right. Anyway, question. I mean, how do you feel about watching a color video thing like this? Is this engaging? Is it not what you're here for? Would you be more interested if it was just a time lapse? That's all good enough. Like I said, this is a pinup. It's mostly for online, and if I go to print it, I can always clean it up. Foreground. I should label these. It's a bad habit not to label these. But often I'm like, oh no, it's fine. I don't need to label it. And then half hour later, I've got 30 layers, and I'm like, what? What am I doing? This is the tree. Alright, I mean, that's basically it. You know, and I could take more time to look at this and think more about what I want to do. I'm going to keep it super simple, though. I think I'm just going to use some fades and some cuts. Typically, when I do fades, which like in variations of stuff, I'll do them on and I'll create a copy of this same layer so that when I do it on that layer, I can save it if I screw it up. I can just throw out the copied layer. And unfortunately, there's some things in... 'cause, Clip Studio that I'm not familiar with on how to do it in Clip Studio, so I have to end up doing it in Photoshop. You know, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to continue here. I'm just going to do these in cuts. So I don't know about the shading. So what I'm going to do is copy these, all of them. I'm just going to move them down here. Grass copy, tree copy, puka copy. I'm going to keep them down here for safety for later. This is a weird way of doing things. So now what I like to do, I like to use the lasso tool for shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all my dark areas right now. So this is everywhere. I'm going to make it darker. Oh, there's some white there. I'm going to do these in a couple of layers and passes. I'll shut off the other layer so I can really see it. I mean, there's different ways of going about this. Like Taki likes to do these cuts by hand. So she'll just get a darker version or whatever shading's going to be. Or maybe even a completely different tool, I think. And then she hand draws out where she's going to do the shading. There's something about the hard edges that I really like here. But that's for me. I mean, because Taki is a better colorist than I am anyway, so maybe she doesn't need this sort of lasso look to make it look great. And because they're on different layers, like I can lasso grab stuff without worrying about accidentally grabbing the background, you know. And you know, sort of in my mind's eye, I'm just looking at where the shading falls. So if you're asking, well, how do you know where the shadows are? The answer is practice. Some of it just comes from, you know, because I drew the piece already, I'm aware in my mind where the shapes are, where the shadows would fall. I indicated some of that in the inks, and that's part of why it's kind of easy to just jump right in. This is kind of classic color lighting. Super simple. It's clearly coming from above her. So again, I don't have to think too hard about where those shadows would actually fall. I do have to look out that inside here, I gotta make sure that little stuff like this is caught. But I usually just fix this after after I've darkened it up. You'll see. We'll get there in a second. A little shade of her hair. Hoodie. Alright, I think I might be done on their figures. So what I figured out that I like to do is then, I don't know why I'm addicted to using this. It's the hue saturation. So I'm going to darken this by 30% and bump up the saturation by 15 to 20%. And now That part of the shading is done. And I can also kind of easily grab sections if I want to make it a little darker than others. So typically I'll do a dark pass like that, and I'm going to do a light pass. So all of this area is going to be hit with a highlight. I wish I knew how to move this thing. Like the bar sometimes is in the way. This control bar thing, and I can't quite see what I'm doing. There's no actual right or wrong way to do these things. Just depends on how many mistakes you are willing to deal with, I guess. This might need some fixing a little bit later as I go back through it, but that's okay. Some of the areas I can just highlight like that. I'm not too sure what I want to do with her face, like what I want to highlight here. Maybe I won't. Like my gut is telling me it would look a little weird. Yeah, actually I think that's going to need a hand touch. I'm going to have to lighten that stuff up by hand because of the scales. They call for their own shapes and stuff, and that would feel a little weird. I'm going to lighten that up. I can see every colorist that I know just yelling at me right now. But I've colored whole books like this. I did an Attack on Titan story, which was a lot of fun. So I got to write and draw. And yeah, I colored all that, and I basically used this approach. I was really happy with it. People seem to be happy with it. Alright, there we go. Control U, and I'm going to brighten this. Now I find when I'm lightening things, I have to go higher than 30%. I like to go up to about 50%. It also kind of depends too, because different colors have different hues to them and different values, so lightening it, like, it gets lighter on certain objects than it does on other colors, if that makes any sense. It would have saved myself a lot of time probably if I just kept it all on one layer. This is where I get confused about the layers, because I feel like I could have just done all that lighting and darkening all together at once, but now I'm going to do it in a couple of different areas. Now it has to be done on 3 different layers instead of just, say, 1. And also, I apologize, as I'm working, not always, thinking straight, so hopefully I'm communicating my ideas okay. Okay, Control U, let's darken that. Bump up the saturation. Yeah, I feel like that should be a little darker. Oh. Let's go back. There we go. Yeah, just create more value, more lights and darks. A few highlights here. I don't do the saturation thing when I lighten it. It just doesn't seem to make any real difference. I don't know why. So here's some touch-ups I'm going to do. Because of the shapes of the tree, it's got so many like ins and outs, and like I don't want to sit there with the turn that stabilization way down. I don't want to sit there with the lasso trying to go around every little thing. Also, I know this would just look better with a hand touch. The only way it wouldn't is if I really want to go in a heavily abstract way, in which case I could do all these kind of like funky shapes for the trees, shading and stuff, but I'm not going to abstract with this. I'm going fairly straightforward, you know. Here's where it makes sense to kind of draw in some of the shading and stuff because of the textures. And speaking of this Kickstarter, I gotta say, I've had a shockingly good time with it. You know, I like anybody, when you first do a Kickstarter, you don't know what to expect. And I don't just mean the level of success or response, but like the back and forth with the fans, I hate saying fans, with the readers has been great. Like, I'm kind of shocked at how much I'm actually enjoying it. Alright, this is going to look funky. So, I'm going to just, oops, get on the right side. So I'm going to do these layers here of going from green to blue. Right, so this will eventually get the blue. So this is going to be slightly more abstract, but I feel like it'll work. I'm just going to keep pushing this until it gets to like a blue sky. Oops. Keep pushing it bluer and bluer. All right. One more. One more. There's a little weird tangent here, so I'm going to cheat with a pen. dig it. Look at this, we're almost done here. Yeah, so typically in Photoshop, I plan to go from green to blue with like a fade. I haven't figured out how to do fades yet in um, Clip Studio. So typically what I do is I'll kind of stop here. And then come back to it later. Because that gives me a chance to just look at it fresh and see stuff that I'm not seeing right now, like what needs to pop more. That sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to look at this again fresh later. To see what needs to pop, because like I can tell right now, everything kind of the values aren't strong enough. I'm not sure how to turn this into grayscale offhand, but if I had turned it to gray, I could see where the problems are. But this is basically it. Like I said, I am going to still come back to it a little bit later. I just, for the sake of the length of the video, I'm going to stop now. And check out the After Realm Kickstarter. It's in the link below, and thanks so much for checking out the YouTube channel, and I'm going to try and keep creating content and keep this interesting for you guys, maybe do some answering some questions at some point, and I think that's it.